making a layer cake. We're gonna make a red velvet cake. So I'm just gonna kind of go over, I preheated the oven to 350. I have my ingredients. I have my oil. I'll just read this out. I have 3 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 2 teaspoons of natural cocoa powder, half a teaspoon of salt. I have my unsalted butter. I have my vegetable oil. I have my 4 large eggs, and I have my buttermilk, and I have my red food coloring, and I have my white vinegar. Everything is here, okay? Now, what I'm first gonna do is prepare the pans. So I'm gonna kind of go over that with you. I'm gonna take parchment paper, and I'm going to cut circles that will fit inside my pan. So basically, it's pretty simple. Okay, so I'm going to take a pencil and simply trace around the bottom. So I have a nice clear circle, yes. And I am going to cut out parchment paper so that I can fit the circles inside of each of the pans, okay? Now, it's a really good way to prepare your pans. You could actually, wait a minute. And then I just kind of make sure they fit. They fit so well that they don't want to come out. And I take a little bit of Crisco. It's one of the few reasons I would use Crisco. And I'm going to put it on a napkin. A little bit of Crisco on a napkin, and this is called greasing. So I'm just going to rub the Crisco on the pan, and then I put my parchment paper on top and kind of smooth it out so that it goes on smoothly, and it kind of adheres to the pan, so that even if I didn't cut it perfectly, it'll stick to the pan really well. Okay, and then I did the same thing for the other 2. Remember, you don't want them, if you don't have parchment paper, you do the same procedure. You just grease your pan lightly. I mean, you cover it completely, but you don't want the big globs of Crisco. And you would dust it with a little bit of flour. Okay, take it in there, kind of spread it out, make sure it's sticking to the bottom of the pan so there's no bubbles. See, I'm just kind of rubbing it out. Put these aside. Okay, I'm going to whisk my flour, my 3 cups of flour, my baking soda and salt, my cocoa powder into the dry ingredients. So I can put these aside. And I'm going to whisk it so it's nice and blended. Now, red velvet cakes have a very light chocolate flavor. They're not a heavy, bitter chocolate. They're very light. That's why a lot of people like it, because it's not so overpowering. Okay? Next step. Okay, now I'm going to bring my mixer over. I don't need the whisk, I need the paddle attachment. Here's my sugar. Put that right in there. And my butter. Let's see, how much butter do I need? I need 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. And that would be 1 stick. So I have my sugar and my unsalted butter. So this recipe has butter and oil. So remember I told you that when butter bakes, it kind of evaporates the water out of it. So sometimes it makes, some cakes can be, or cookies can be a little drier when they use butter. I'm just breaking it up. It's been setting out, it's room temperature. Here's my hand rack. I'm gonna put it on low speed. Low speed. Okay, so now I am creaming my butter and my sugar so that it's gonna beat it for a couple minutes until it starts to cream, okay? Butter and our sugar. We're now gonna add our egg yolks. Turn it up a little bit higher. Our oil. Let that mix a second. 1 tablespoon of vanilla flavoring. Right there. Okay. And we're going to let that mix just for a second. Can you see it? Starting to smell good? I'm going to scrape, I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to tilt it up. I'm going to scrape down my sides, make sure everything is good. Get some of these things out of the way here. Okay. So far I have my egg yolks, my vinegar, my oil, everything I have in there, my butter, so it has a little bit of both. And up here, I have already combined my dry ingredients ready to go, okay? So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna alternate the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients, which is our buttermilk. So if you remember, we alternate, we start with dry. So I'm gonna put a big spoonful of dry in there. Put it on low, and then I'm going to add a little bit of buttermilk. And then I'm going to add a little bit of dry. Kind of watch it, and a little bit of buttermilk. And I'm now going to add the very rest of my flour. Put that aside, and I'm going to put it on low and let it stir for a couple minutes. Okay? Add my food coloring, and the recipe calls for like a tablespoon. It really does, you know, it's kind of up to how red you really want it. I'm going to put that in. So there's not, you know, the recipe calls for 1 to 2 tablespoons since I was almost done. Yeah, so just kind of finish it up. Can you see it? Yeah. Okay, we're gonna stop and we're gonna scrape this down and we're gonna check it all out. I'm gonna make sure I don't get this on my clothes. Okay, now I'm gonna take this off. And as tempting as it is to taste it, I'm not. I'm gonna wipe this over here, kind of wipe my counter down. And then I'm gonna do something that's a little different with this recipe. I'm gonna set this aside for a second and wipe everything down, make sure nothing's really bad. I'm gonna get my whisk and another bowl. And this is different, this is a different recipe. And this is what I get for not probably reading the recipe through before I started. Okay, there. And I'm gonna put my egg whites in here and just beat them, just get them a little bit fluffy. There's a little bit of egg yolk in there, so they won't get too fluffy. happy with that. And I'm gonna put this aside, move my mixer over here so I can maneuver. And now I am going to fold in the egg whites. Now folding in means I'm gonna dump them in there. You kind of see me putting them in there. And I'm not going to beat them or stir them vigorously because it'll take a little bit of air I got in there out. And so I fold over. See how I'm kind of almost folding it? Like I'm going down and pulling the bottom up. It's a very gentle mixing technique. Putting the bottom up. You want to make sure they're incorporated, but you don't want to like, what do you call it? Beat them so hard that you take the air out of it. Wash these dishes. Okay. Now we're going to, I don't have a scale to measure them out. So what I am going to do is use one of my measuring cups. So I will start out with about, okay guys, you see what a disaster that is? There, okay, 1 cup, 1 cup. 1 cup. 1 cup. And 1 cup. Part of a cup. Part of a cup. And part of a cup. Let me see how that's doing. So I shake mine to get it level. The video had her use a spatula. I guess you could do it any way you want. We'll find out how mine turns out to see who's right. Yeah, pretty good. We're going to put 2 on the top and 1 in the bottom, and then I'm going to switch it about halfway through, okay? So I'm going to set the timer for like 15 minutes and then I'll switch it. And I will be back to show you what they look like when they come in. Okay, it's been another 15 minutes. We're now going to see if they're done. We're going to check them. They smell wonderful. I'll take out 1. If I lightly touch them, they're still pretty soft, but they're done. I think they're done. Because one of the biggest things that I have a problem with is sometimes over baking them. So I think these are as close to being done as I can, nice and light. Okay, so I'm gonna let it sit for a minute. I'm gonna get the others out and check them. Here's the other one. Oh, perfect, perfect, perfect. And the last, but not least. Now, what I'm gonna do is let them set for just a couple minutes. I'm gonna get a knife and go around the edges, and I'm gonna invert them on a cake rack or a cookie rack, and I'll be back for that, okay? First, I'll turn off the oven. There. And I'll be right back. Guys, we're back to check out these cakes. Now I'm going to frost them in a bit or in the morning, depending on, yeah, in the morning. So I'm just going to wrap them up tonight and let them stay. This room is so cold that it's almost like a refrigerator, so I don't have any worries. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is take a spatula or just a butter knife, and I'm going to go around the edges of the cake to make sure that it's not, sticking. So when I turn it over, when I invert it onto the cooling rack, it should come out pretty good. Okay? And so now I take my cooling rack, which is just a little rack with feet on it, and hopefully it will turn out. And because I lined it with paper, it just comes right out. And you can see, I'm going to remember to pull the paper off. Okay? I'm just going to taste a crumb here. No, I'll be good. And that's my nice little cake, and I'm going to let it cool. A nice safe spot. Put it right here, and we'll do it again. See the crumbs right here. Go this way. I'll do it with this one now. Just take the edges, and I can see now that it's cooled down. It definitely was done. Just kind of try not to cut the cake itself, because you want a nice smooth finish on the edges when you frost it. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, I'm going to invert it like that, and because I used the parchment paper and I went around the edges, it comes right out. How nice is that? How nice is that? It's going to make a beautiful layer cake. Now remember, a layer cake is a cake that has layers. So usually it's a, some people call it a sponge cake. In this case, it's a regular shortening cake because we use the fat. And we're going to layer it with frosting or some kind of filling, different things in the middle. Because this is a basic red velvet cake, we're not going to get too fancy. I mean, we could, but we're just going to do a basic cream cheese frosting that I will do tomorrow. Okay, this one's not coming out. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back and see if I did not run my knife around the edges as good as I should have. I'll probably let it cool a little bit too long. Just kind of go around the edges there. That should do it. There you go. And pull the paper off. There you go. So now I have my my 3 pieces of cake. My 3 layers of cake. 3 layers of cake. Can you see them? I'm going to move the camera just a little bit. Now look how nice those look. And now when I layer them tomorrow, they're going to be just amazing. See you in the morning. Okay guys, welcome back. Our cakes are nice and cool. Before I start with the cakes, I am going to make my frosting paddle because we're using butter, so it's going to be too heavy for the whisk, my bowl. We're going to use 2 packs of cream cheese, 16 ounces, and each one has 8 ounces in it. Good thing I bought 2. And we're going to put that right into the mixing bowl. Okay. And we're going to use 2 sticks of butter. And this is going to be a traditional cream cheese frosting. Now, the one I use in class has the ratio of butter to cream cheese. I'm just going to break it up. Okay, now we're going to add a tablespoon of vanilla extract, vanilla flavoring, Extract is usually a little bit more intense in flavor than the vanilla flavoring. Kind of extract applies what it is. It's extraction of the vanilla bean. And then we're going to start adding our powdered sugar. Hopefully I have enough. And the recipe calls for 5 cups. And I am going to put it in a cup at a time because I don't want to have powdered sugar all over my clothes. Two. Might as well just get this last little bit here right now. There you go. Pour this 3. Oops, we're just getting everything, and here's top it off. So guys, you always have to kind of get to the bottom of the bowl because the way it's shaped, a lot of dry ingredients will kind of fall down to the bottom. And this stuff is very thick. So I'm trying to get that little bit of powdered sugar that fell to the bottom. Yeah. This one is really thick. Oops. I think I like the more buttery version of this frosting because it's a little easier to handle. But then if you like cream cheese frosting, this is your go-to, okay? And because it's so thick, I could add just a drop of water to it. I'm not water, sorry, what am I saying? Okay. Let's pull it off. There. That's as good as we can do, right? Okay, so now we're going to use a bottom of a big bowl for our cake. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to reach over here and get one of my cakes. I'm going to turn it upside down so that the cake is like this. Okay? And I'm going to do exactly what they did. Okay, so now I have my cake. And I'm going to do what she did in her video. I'm just going to add a little bit of vanilla milk to it. Just to give it a little bit of moisture. Okay, that's all I'm going to do. So there's my cake. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a butter knife because that's what I have. And I use, I dip it in water simply because that gives it, it keeps the friction off. It helps it slide, and so thus the cake doesn't tear or pull. So I take my knife, dip it in a little bit of water, and I'm just gonna spread this very thick, see it did tear a little bit, frosting. Fortunately, this is in the middle. Not quite sure why it tore. Like I said, I need to step up my game a little bit. I think I probably put a little bit too much of the soak on it. Fortunately, this is in the middle, so we're not gonna see the red crumbs. And put a little bit around the edges. Now you don't want to dip your knife in the water so much that you actually get the frosting wet, but you just want to dip it in the water enough that it doesn't tear, which for some reason I did it so there on the edges anyways. Okay, now we're going to get our second cake here, and we're going to very carefully turn it out and place it on top of this one. Okay? And again, I'm not. Does that look good, guys? Now you can kind of see where if I dip it in the water, it kind of skies a little bit smoother over the frosting. The water, like I said, you don't want to wet the frosting, but you want the spatula or the butter knife or whatever you're using to glide smoothly. As you can. And usually I put a little heavier layer of frosting on the very top more than the filling. Now, if you're doing like a nice little butter cake or yellow cake, you could actually the filling between the layers could be something besides frosting, which actually is really better than just the pure frosting. But this particular cake, that's what it is. Now you could almost serve it like that. It's what they call like a naked cake. It's kind of pretty, but we're going to try to frost the sides. Let's see. Oh, see what I mean about wetting the spatula? I don't know, this cake just doesn't want to seem to do that too well, does it? But now I'm in for a penny and I'm out for a pound. In for a penny and in for a pound, sorry. So once I started frosting the sides, I kind of have to keep doing it. And if I had some sprinkles, like I could hide some of the imperfections. But I don't have it here. So I'll just keep going. Okay. Yeah, this is one ugly looking cake, isn't it? But I tell you what, it's still beautiful in my eyes, okay? Okay. This is going to be a mess to clean up. Now, so we have our cake up as best you can, because you don't want it, you know, and obviously if this was home and I had my supplies, I'd probably decorate it so you didn't notice the crumbles so much. You know, sprinkles or cake decorating or something like that would hide a lot of flaws. But it's a basic cake there, okay? Now, to serve it, I'm going to slice it. I'm gonna cut a piece so you guys can see how pretty, hopefully how pretty it is inside. It is rich. This is not a cake that you could, with all that cream cheese. And there's your cake. Just a nice and messy, but good, okay? I think I should stick with cupcakes. What do you think? Okay. Enjoy.